Hey there yet again, and welcome to another video where we're learning about JavaScript. In this case, we are going to learn about creating our own functions. So far, what you have seen is the fundamentals of JavaScript, where you have a script tag, and then you can write some JavaScript code inside of the script tag, or better yet, you would use like the source equals syntax, but just for these videos, I'm not using that. But anyway, you've seen writing JavaScript code to do various things. And you've seen creating variables where you can assign a name to a value and then use that name in multiple places. And you've seen calling functions. So we've seen like console.log, document.write, and the alert function, and they all do slightly different things. And in a previous video, I mentioned that functions are one of the most fundamental building blocks of coding, and I think I still agree with that. And one of the things to keep in mind is that you aren't limited to these functions. You're not limited to the functions that JavaScript gives you. You can create your own functions, and that's what this video is going to be about. So I have this JavaScript syntax, this JavaScript code in my HTML file here, which if I go here and I refresh the page, I can say, it says, what is your name? And I can give it a name, and it'll say, hello, that name, and it'll put it in the web page, and it'll put it in the JavaScript console. And this will work, and you can do some interesting things here. You could ask a series of questions and then do something with the answers. But here, it's not very interactive. I can't do anything after the page is done loading, and it's pretty static after that. But the beauty of JavaScript is that it makes your web page interactive. So in order to get to that sort of interactive component, or that interactive style of web page, we're going to talk about creating our own functions. Okay, so that's kind of our background and our motivation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my code here, and what I want to do is not just run this right at the very beginning, because that's kind of boring. I can always just answer the question, and it's here and it's fine, but it's not super interesting. So what I want to do is first I'm going to create my own function. And I'm going to do that using the function keyword. So I'm going to write the word function and then a space and then the name of the function. In this case, I'm going to call it like show message, and then parentheses. In the parentheses, you would put any parameters that your function takes. I think that my function will not take any parameters, so I'm just going to have empty parentheses, and then a curly brace, kind of similar to how CSS was, and then an ending curly brace as well. And you usually put, each line of code on its own line. So I gave myself some white space here. And what I'm going to do is move all of my code into that show message function. Okay. So now I have a show message function, which does the same thing that my code was doing before. It prompts the user for a name, it creates a message from that name, and then shows that message in various places. So now I'm going to save that, I'm going to refresh, and we will see that nothing actually happens. And that's expected because we have a function here, but nothing is calling the function. So similar to how we would call these other existing functions like alert, you call your own function the exact same way. You use its name, and then you have parentheses, and then in the parentheses you put any parameters. In this case, it doesn't have any parameters, and then a semicolon. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to click refresh, and now we have our code running. So in this case, I have called the show message function, and when that function is called, it runs all of the code inside of that function, kind of like a recipe, like exactly line by line, following the steps one at a time. So what is my name? and now it prints the name to the web page and to the JavaScript console. And that works, but it's not super interesting, right? Because this is not much different than if we had just written all of the code in the script tag directly. We are still just calling it right at the very beginning. And so to fix that problem, we're going to talk about events next. And let me get rid of this maybe, so I'm no longer calling it from the JavaScript itself. And cool, so now we're back to kind of a clean slate where nothing is calling the function. And events are a JavaScript concept that lets you kind of hook into your page. And there's a bunch of different kinds of events, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them in this video. So maybe I'll make a p tag that says like click me. So this is just a regular little p tag so far. It just says click me. Clicking it doesn't actually do anything, so I can click that as many times as I want and nothing will happen. So to change this code to have something happen when something clicks it, I'm going to have an onClick attribute, and I'm going to set it equal to some value, and this value is JavaScript code. So in these quotation marks, I can write any JavaScript code I want. So let's say like alert, and in the alert function, I'll just pass like hi, just to get something working. So let me refresh that. So now I'm going to click it, and now I see my alert that says hi. So this line of code, this line of HTML is saying create a p tag with the content click me, and then add an onClick attribute, which is equal to JavaScript code that will run whenever this event is triggered. In this case, it's onClick. It's when this is clicked. So I can do it multiple times, and every time I click, I'm going to get that same kind of alert dialog. And so that is kind of events in a nutshell. You add a HTML element, and that element has an attribute, and that attribute points to some JavaScript code. And now to kind of combine the different things that we've talked about, what I'm going to do is change this JavaScript code from the alert function to calling our own function. So now I'm going to say show message. And so this JavaScript will run this, will call this show message function whenever I click my p tag. So I'm going to refresh here, and I'm going to click. What is my name? My name is Kevin. Okay. And it says hello Kevin. It says hello Kevin, and it says hello Kevin here. So it's running this code after I click the p tag. One thing I'll point out real quick is like notice that my p tag goes away. And that is because the document.write function actually clears out any content that was already there. So whether that's something you want or not is up to you, but you can also just kind of get rid of it if you would prefer. Okay, so that's events in a nutshell, specifically the onClick event. I think I also maybe want to talk about the onLoad event, which is another one that's used pretty often. So one thing that to keep in mind is that if I would just call my show message function here at the very beginning, it doesn't matter for this example, but what I want you to notice is when this dialog pops up, there's no content in the page yet. And that's going to be a problem in the next video, actually, when you want to start interacting with the content of the page. You want your JavaScript to do something with like an element that's in the page. But if you have your code just being called from the script tag or written directly in the script tag, the content won't be there yet. And so there's another event that I want to introduce that kind of gets around that problem, and that is the onLoad event. So the onLoad event is often used with the body tag. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've only seen it used on the body tag, and it's the exact same idea. You set it equal to some JavaScript. In this case, I'm just going to call the show message function when the page is loaded. So I'm going to refresh. And what is your name? It's Ada, and hello Ada, cool. So I don't think the onload function will, or the onload event attribute will come in handy for this specific video, but it will come in handy eventually, and it's used very commonly in sort of real JavaScript code. So I wanted to point it out now, just so you're not kind of thrown off by it when you see it in the wild. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about is something called scope. And so let me just think about this for a second. Right now I have my single p tag that when I click, it asks me for my name, blah, 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 and it works. But what if I wanted to split this up into a couple different steps? So right now when I click, I show the prompt, I get the name, and then I create my message variable, and then I show that message variable by calling various functions. What if I wanted, I don't know, to have one p tag that sets my name, that asks me for my name, and a different element that shows the greeting? So maybe let's try to do that kind of just from what we know already. So what I could do is, first off, I'm kind of sick of p tags. Maybe I'll just switch this to a button real quick. I've used p tags just because I think, most folks are used to it, but they're kind of a goofy thing to click on. So let me just refresh this. The only thing that changed is now it's a button instead of a p tag. It's fine. My name is Kevin, blah, 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 blah. Cool, cool, cool. That works. And now I want to make a second button that does something slightly different. So maybe this button will say like, click to set name, something like that, and I'll refresh it. And right now I haven't actually changed it, so the label is right now kind of wrong because it sets the name and shows the greeting. And then I want maybe another button that has some text that says like, click to show greeting. These are not super exciting labels or anything, but I just want to kind of show you how it all fits together. So let me refresh that, and now I have my two buttons. They're kind of tiny, but whatever. One sets the name, and it's still calling show message, so it's going to do everything. And the other one does not have an on click, so when I click it, nothing will happen. And what I could do is break this function up into two functions. So maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll have one function that's like function ask for name. I'm not sure, it doesn't really matter. And in here, what I'll do is I'll say I'm going to change my variable to username. Username equals prompt, what is your name? And then a semicolon, of course. Okay, so now down here, I don't need this line anymore because I have it here, and I'm going to change this to username here as well. Okay, so I've got ask for name and I've got show message, and the ask for name function prompts the user for their name and stores it in this username variable. Okay, show message creates a new variable called message, which says hello username exclamation point. So you might kind of expect it to get this username, and then shows that message. So let's see, click to set name. This needs to be ask for name, and this one now needs to be on click equals show message, right? Okay, so I've got two buttons. One calls the ask for name function, which prompts the user for their name, and I have another function, show message, which just shows the message. It does not prompt the user for their name. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to refresh. So now I'm going to click to set my name, and it'll show me the prompt, and I can say my name is Kevin, enter, cool. And notice that like the second alert has not shown. I have not replaced my content with the message or anything, and that's because the ask for name function doesn't do any of that. It only asks the username. And now I'm going to click this second button, and it's going to call show message, and I'm going to pause here and say, what do you expect to happen? Logically, I would honestly expect it to show the message, but I want to click it, and you see this error, and this error like shows up in this JavaScript console. It doesn't actually show up in the web page. So if you don't have your JavaScript console open, you wouldn't see that there was an error there, which is one of the reasons I really recommend like always having your JavaScript console open. But anyway, we have this uncalled reference error. Username is not defined. And we can even see like exactly which line of code is triggering it. And it's on line 10 is what this stuff means. So on line 10, is where I'm trying to use username and it's not defined. But like, wait a second, didn't I define it right here? And this is where we get into scope. So when you use the let keyword, that variable is in scope inside whatever function that you used it in. So in this case, username is in scope inside of the ask for name function. So basically only on this line. So I could use it here. I could say console.log username colon plus username, and this will work. If I refresh this and I click to set name and I say Kevin, you'll see it prints out here. But as soon as this function is over, as soon as I reach this like closing curly brace, username goes away. It's no longer in the computer's memory. The browser no longer has access to it. It's no longer in scope. So that's why when I click here, I get this error message, username is not defined. And so the way I can get around this is by defining my username variable at a higher level in the scope. In this case, I'm going to define it outside of both functions. So I'm going to put it like right here, let username, and I'm going to end it with a semicolon. I'm not going to actually say equals prompt yet because I don't want that to happen until I actually click my button. And I'm also going to delete the let keyword from here. And I'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to refresh this, and now I expect this to work. So I'm going to say click to set name. What is my name? My name is Kevin. And we see username printed here just from this line here. But I haven't actually shown the message at all, the greeting message. So now I'm going to say click to show greeting. I'm going to click here. This is going to call this function. And now it works. Now I see hello Kevin, I see hello Kevin here, and I see hello Kevin here. And that's because my username variable is now in scope outside of the function, so it'll survive even when this function ends. I could do this, which is going to be a common mistake that folks make. This is a common thing to sort of accidentally use the let keyword when you meant to only set a variable, and we'll see what happens in this case. I'm going to set my name. I'm going to switch it up to Ada this time, and I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to click to show greeting, and we see hello undefined, and that is because when I say let username, I'm actually creating a new variable with the same name, which it's not what I intended. It's a bug basically in my code. So if you see that kind of behavior where you think you set a variable but it's undefined, maybe you have used the let keyword when you didn't intend to. Anyway, so I'm going to backspace that. So this is scope, where if you use the let keyword inside of a function, then that variable is only able to be used inside that function, but you can get around that problem by declaring your variable outside of the function. And undefined variables will be, undefined. So if I click here before I set my name, it'll say hello undefined, because there's no value here. It's not defined yet. But it's at least not an error in your code anymore. It's not a syntax error. You have obeyed the rules of JavaScript. It's just that the variable doesn't have a value. Okay, I think that's as far as I'm going to go for creating functions in JavaScript. So just to kind of summarize, what you learned was how to make your own functions, which are kind of like bundling up a recipe with maybe its own name at the top of like a sticky note or something. And then you can call that function from either from your HTML or from your other JavaScript code, or some combination of both. But it lets you organize your code into these kind of chunks that you can mix and match and reuse. And it'll come in handy a lot when you get into the next lesson, which is making the page more interactive. Cool. So that's functions in JavaScript. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.